Hello, 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 and welcome back to yet another NFL video. Listen, man, we are back with the mock drafts. I recently looked on my channel at when the last mock draft I uploaded was, and it was over a month ago, which is just crazy to think about. But I mean, listen, man, we're back, and it is crazy to me how much free agents, how much I'm already stuttering with 30 seconds in. It is crazy to me how much free agency has changed the outlook of the draft for several teams. There are situations where uh, a certain team I was kind of penciling in a guy at that pick every time and not really thinking about it, but they made a move in free agency that completely throws what they're going to do with their pick up in the air. So I'm very excited now. It was getting kind of stale, like having to do mock drafts months and months before the draft, before free agency even. It's only so much you can really do. And that's why I really don't like people who talk in absolutes in January and February, like people guaranteeing a certain guy to a certain spot before like teams even make their free agency moves. It's just don't listen to those people. They don't know what they're talking about because free agency absolutely shakes up a bunch of what's going to take place during the draft. So let's get into the video, man. I'm excited to talk about it. How y'all doing, man? I'm doing wonderful today. Let's get right into it. All right. Number one overall, one thing I can say at this point, I'm very confident in the Titans will be taking Cam Ward, number one overall. They have had so much opportunity to make a move at quarterback if they were not planning on drafting Cam Ward. They could have got Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, Sam Darnold. They could have traded for Geno Smith. They did none of those things. They are rocking with Will Levis as their only quarterback on the roster, I think. You are sick in the head if you think the Titans are going to roll out Will Levis for a third season. They are going to draft Cam Ward, and I mean, I'm confident in that they spent a lot of money on the offensive line. They now have a completely built offensive line. I could name all five starters for you that are going to be the starters next season. They're very confident in it, and I mean, it appears that they've set everything up for Cam Ward. So it's pretty much a done deal at this point, at least in my mind. The Browns at two. This is where it's so interesting for me. Do the Browns draft a quarterback? I really don't know. The last little bit of time, I've kind of just assumed they're not because I link the Browns with terrible decisions. And I feel like not drafting a quarterback would be one of those terrible decisions. But here's the interesting thing for me. I am very confident that if the Browns stay if the Browns keep this pick and they don't draft a quarterback, Jackson Dart or Shadur Sanders might be available at pick number 33 because it's really interesting to me because I think these top three teams right here all should draft a quarterback. But I don't think any other team, like any other of the 29 teams, will draft a quarterback in the first round. So I feel like the Browns could just take the best player available here, or whoever they think the best player is, and wait till 33 and get Jackson Dart or Shadur Sanders. So I feel like that's the best course of action for the Browns. The question is, who do you take between Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter? I am not as high on Abdul Carter as some people are. We're so quick to throw around this whole generational term. And listen, the guy's only had 1 year of experience playing at this edge rusher position. Before that, he was a stand up linebacker. Now, don't get me wrong, he was amazing as an edge rusher this season, but I don't really buy the whole generational thing. I could be very wrong about that. Listen, if if Abdul Carter ends up being an All Pro, you will see me come out and be like, I was wrong about Abdul Carter. But especially with the re-signing Myles Garrett and everything like that, I think Travis Hunter is the move here. Whether it's at wide receiver or cornerback, I think both. But I'm gonna go out on a limb into the Browns draft Travis Hunter at two, and then a quarterback at 33, and they might just bring in Russell Wilson to be the quarterback next year. Who knows? But Travis Hunter at number two for the Browns. Giants at three. It's the same thing as the Titans for me. The only quarterback on the Giants roster is fucking Tommy DeVito. I mean, and listen, I think they're still in the market for an Aaron Rodgers. I do not think he's coming to the Giants. I guess they're still in the market for a Russell Wilson. I don't I just don't think that would make a difference for him. I think he would look bad in the Giants offense. I mean, if Brian Dable really wants to save his job, he has to tie his name to a young quarterback and show some type of light at the end of the tunnel. Because right now the Giants are in a laughably terrible position on the offense. So give me Shadur Sanders at number three. People have been laughing at the Shadur Sanders top three hype. I have been very consistent on I don't think Shadur or Cam Ward for that matter are generational blue chip type of players, but because of teams' need, they will both go very highly. And Shadur Sanders, listen, I've never said he was a generational talent, anything like that, but he is a mid first round caliber player, in my opinion, and the Giants are desperate at the position. So that creates a perfect storm for him to end up top three. And by the way, Travis Hunter and Shadur going at number two and number three overall would be detrimental to Deion Sanders haters if that were to actually happen. Um, Patriots at number four overall. Extremely interesting position. Abdul Carter does not make a lot of sense. They just brought in Harold Landry and Milton Williams and some other defensive linemen, Clavon Chason, Robert Spillane. They brought in a lot of guys in the front seven. I don't think Abdul Carter is the move here. I think it could potentially be a trade down spot. I think it could potentially be Tedero McMillan. But that left tackle's position is really bad for the Patriots. I'm going to go with Will Campbell. I'm not buying the stuff that he's going to be moved to guard. I think a team's going to give him a shot at left tackle, and it should be the Patriots. The Patriots desperately need help on the offensive line. Will Campbell's the best offensive lineman in the draft. Just let him play left tackle, man. Just see what happens. Next up, we have the Jaguars at number five. It's been pretty consistent for me. Listen, I think Tedero McMillan is very interesting. That might be something I explore to the Jaguars in the future. Can you imagine a team up of him and Brian Thomas? That is beyond exciting, especially considering the fact that the Jaguars got rid of Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram. They could use some more help in the receiver room. However, you see Abdul Carter, though, but they have Josh Hines Allen. They had, maybe this is a trade down spot. I wasn't even planning on doing trades in this, but I feel like this is kind of too obvious for a team to move up for Abdul Carter. I was thinking the Panthers. Here we got the Panthers moving up three spots. What would they give up here? Let's say they give up a second round pick next year and a fourth rounder this year. I think that makes sense. Let's do this trade. Jaguars move down three spots. They still get a guy that they're probably looking after anyways. Force the trade. Panthers trade up to number five. They take Abdul Carter. He remains a Panther or a Nittany Lion, whatever the hell the Penn State mascot is. Then we have the Raiders at number six. This is so interesting to me. Do they take it's between listen, obviously the Raiders pick up Geno Smith. That kind of eliminates their quarterback problem. Do they take Ashton Jeanty or Tedero McMillan? And it's not just that, it's the combination for me of do you take, because remember, they draft high in the second round. Do you take, for example, an Ashton Jeanty and what's a receiver at the top of the second round? An Ashton Jeanty and a Jaden Higgins, or do you take a Tedero McMillan? And keep in mind now, Chip Kelly is the new offensive coordinator for the Raiders. I think it would be much more in Chip Kelly's favor if they went Tedero McMillan, Quinshon Judkins, or Travion Henderson than if they went Ashton Jeanty and a receiver in the early second round. That's just my basic thought of it. They could absolutely take Ashton Jeanty right here, but I'm going to go with Tedero McMillan at this point in time to the Raiders number six overall. Jets at number seven. They have lost a little bit on this defensive line, notably Javon Kinlaw and Solomon Thomas. I've been pretty consistent with the whole Mason Graham thing here. Listen, they could also go with offensive line here. They lost Morgan Moses. I don't know if Tyron Smith's even on the roster anymore. Um, Offensive line could certainly be a need for them. Let's take a look here. Tyler Warren, I just don't think. I think you address the trenches before you go after a tight end. It's between an offensive. No, I'm gonna go offensive line. Give Justin Fields the protection he deserves. Where is he? Armand Membu is a guy who was not getting any hype in like January or December, for example, but all of a sudden is like a lock for a top 10 pick. I don't know how that stuff happens, but hey, I'm going to roll with the hype per se. I don't doubt him at all. I'm just saying it's like it's weird how nobody was talking about him in season or right after the season ended, but now all of a sudden, he's a top 10 guy. But I'm buying into it. Armand Membu to the Jets at number 7 overall. Jaguars at number 8. It's just Mason Graham for me. I mean, like I said, if Tedero McMillan was available right here, maybe that'd be an interesting option, but they could absolutely draft receiver later on. Give me Mason Graham as a real game wrecker. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. Mason Graham, Josh Allen, Travon Walker, Eric Armstead. That could be a really, really scary defensive line. Saints at number 9 overall. I really do think Ashton Jeanty and Alvin Kamara could just be a dangerous combination, similar to what Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara was early in Alvin Kamara's career, except just on steroids. But I also think the Saints have many more needs from, well, they have needs everywhere, if I'm being honest with you. Receiver's a big one, but after McMillan going off the board, I don't think another receiver goes in the top 10 or top 12. Offensive line certainly is where I'm looking here. Let's scroll down here. Is Kelvin Banks on the board still? He is, but yeah, Kelvin Banks or Josh Simmons. I'll go Kelvin Banks here to the Saints at number 9 overall. Maybe kick Trevor Penning inside and just try and give Derek Carr some more protection there. Bears at number 10. This is the new favorite spot for Ashton Jeanty, and I can see why. The Bears, the whole offseason champions thing gets thrown around, and I don't really know why it's a negative thing. If a GM makes amazing moves, they should be complimented and praised for those moves. Ryan Poles simply is really good at making the right moves during the offseason. And now they got a good head coach in there. Well, we assume so. He's never been a head coach before, but if they hit on Ben Johnson in the head coaching job and they get Ashton Jeanty at number 10 overall, the Bears are really, really scary moving forward. So this would be the absolute dream scenario for the Bears fans. Niners at 11. I mean, the Niners, you want to talk about a team who has a dozen needs all of a sudden. You can convince me defensive line, DB, safety or corner, um, offensive line, receiver maybe. The Niners just there is no shortage of needs here for the Niners. It's really just best player available. Like, what do you think would help you the most at this point in time? I'm not even sure. I got Jahdae Barron looking at me. I got Will Johnson looking at me. It's tough, man. At first, I was thinking offensive line because they lost that Jalen Moore guy. They also lost Aaron Banks. Oh man, I think I am going to go offensive line. Give me Josh Simmons here out of Ohio State. It's just they've lost so much. But if you're going to pay Brock Purdy $50 million a year coming up here, you gotta protect him, keep him upright. So Josh Simmons to the Niners at number 11 overall. Cowboys at 12. Obviously, Ashton Jenkins not available. It's weird to me. They let Rico Dowdle walk for not a lot of money, and he was really good for them last. That's really confusing to me. They brought in Miles Sanders and Javonte Williams to kind of replace Rico Dowdle's production when they could have just re-signed Rico Dowdle for not a lot of money. That's a really confusing pick in my or this decision in my opinion. But anyways, I think they will draft running back in the second round. First round here, I'm looking at offensive line or receiver. I'm just going to go receiver. Give me Luther Burden. Luther Burden to the Cowboys, I think makes the most sense. He has star potential, I think more so than some of these other receivers in this class. I think pair him up on the opposite side of CeeDee Lamb and let him run wild. I think that could be very exciting and open up a lot more opportunity for the Cowboys moving forward. Dolphins at 13, they did end up losing Javon Holland kind of as expected. Um, do they just replace him with a Malachi Starks, a Nick Emanwari? I'm not so sure at this point in time. I think the offensive line certainly is something that you should be looking towards. Who did they bring in during free agency? Did they make any big free agency moves? I don't think they did. They brought in Nick Westbrook-Akine. That's the only move that's coming to mind for me. Um, who's an offensive lineman they could draft at this point in time? Not a lot of options that I'm seeing. Gray Zabel, Josh Connerly, I don't think so. Maybe I do just go Malachi Starks here. Hmm. Yeah, let's do it. Malachi Starks at 13. Pretty consistent pickup that I've been doing during these mock drafts. Colts at 14. Colts are a team where they really address their secondary, and now I'm almost not going to even consider giving them a safety or a cornerback in mock drafts going forward. The new need that's opened up for them is the interior of their offensive line. They just lost their franchise center and Will Fries as an offensive guard. So multiple needs on the interior of the offensive line, or do you address that later on in the draft and pick up a one of a kind Tyler Warren, who's sitting right here at 14? I'm going to go with Tyler Warren. I mean, like I said, I feel like there's a lot of guys in the second round you can kind of just plug and play at guard or center. I think there is only one Tyler Warren in this class, and the potential that he opens up for this offense and being a Pro Bowl, all pro level player means much more than getting the best possible of a group of offensive guards, in my opinion. Falcons at 15. They sneakily stole Leonard Floyd from the 49ers, which was a really slept on and good move, in my opinion. That certainly does not address the entirety of their pass rush problem. I think it's still going to be a big need for them. That's where I'm going to look to at least in the draft here. So, I mean, it's been edge rusher every time for the Falcons, and it's because it's just such a glaring and massive need. I'm not going to switch up on that. The question is, who do you think the best edge rusher is in this class after Abdul Carter? I think it's either James Pierce Jr. or Mike Green. And it's the production versus the athletic traits versus the level of competition. There's no wrong answer in my opinion. I think I gave them Mike Green last time. So this time I think I'm going to go with James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee. Cardinals at 16. They're a team who went out and addressed their defensive line with guys like Josh Green, or not Josh Green, Josh Sweat, and who else? They brought in another guy, I think a defensive tackle. So I'm not as keen to give them a defensive lineman, and I actually kind of like their secondary with guys like Garrett Williams, Max Melton they drafted last year. They still have Sean Murphy Bunting. They could draft a corner, don't get me wrong, but you got guys like Jahdae Barron and Will Johnson just staring you in the face. Do you Yeah, actually, I've talked myself into it. I'm not going to pass up on a Will Johnson because of guys like Garrett Williams and Sean Murphy Bunting. No disrespect, but yeah, Will Johnson sitting right there. Will Johnson to the Cardinals. Bengals at 17 here. It's going to be defensive line. They just today, as I'm announcing this, I think re-signed Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, like both at the same time to massive extensions. So those guys are locked in for the future. They are the receiving core of the Bengals moving forward. So now we look to the defense, and they have holes all over the defense, don't get me wrong, but none is bigger than the hole that will be left by Trey Henderson if they decide to move on from him, which is just ridiculous to me. Don't get me wrong. I really like T. Higgins as a player, but there's no shot on planet Earth I'm paying T. Higgins instead of the guy who has 35 sacks over the last 2 years. That is mind-boggling to me if they decide to move on from Trey Henderson. So if they do, let's look at the guys that they could replace him with. Donovan Zaraku, Mike Green. Uh, quickly about Shamar Stewart. I've seen a lot of talk about this guy right here, Shamar Stewart, about his athletic profile being one of a kind. And don't get me wrong, that has a place in terms of projecting a guy to be better at the NFL level than he was in college. But, brother, if you've never had more than 2 sacks in a season at the college level, how can I expect you to break out at the NFL? It's just so tough for me. There are guys that you have never heard of. I mean, there are offensive linemen who are going to end up being accountants, high school offensive coordinators, D3 strength and conditioning coaches. These are the guys that shut down Shamar Stewart this season, and you expect me to get him drafted in the top 20, I can't do it. Listen, another guy where if he turns out to be an all pro, I'll admit that I was wrong, but I am not buying into the Shamar Stewart hype at this point in time. Give me Mike Green out of Marshall, production at the highest level, led the country in sacks, if I'm not mistaken, technique on point. Mike Green to the Bengals at 17. My Seahawks at 18. What do I want them to do with this pick? It's no wrong answer, honestly. Just look at the options. Jahdae Barron, I would not mind that whatsoever. Jahad Campbell, I would like that a lot. I do not want defensive line. That if I could say anything, please do not draft a defensive lineman in the first round. We signed DeMarcus Lawrence. We drafted Byron Murphy last year. Please, Mike McDonald, John Schneider. We do not need any more defensive linemen. Emeka Egbuka, Matthew Golden, Jahdae Barron, Jahad Campbell, or do we please God address the interior of our offensive line? Let's take a look here. Gray Zabel, I think Tyler Booker is getting a lot of hype as a top 20 level player. Here's why I'm going to go with Gray Zabel. I think Tyler Booker might end up being a better pure guard, but I think Gray Zabel can be a really good guard with the potential to play right tackle for us if Abraham Lucas cannot get over his constant state of being injured. So I think Gray Zabel gives us a lot more flexibility. So I'm going to finally address the offensive line via the draft. Buccaneers at 19 here. Their offense is pretty much flawless. So let's look at where they could improve defensively. Jahad Campbell, Jahdae Barron, or pass rusher. I've said it before, I'll say it again. The defensive line class is incredibly deep. I think Jahdae Barron is the best DB on the board by a mile. Give me Jahdae Barron for the Buccaneers. Great pick there. Broncos at 20. This was the team I was alluding to, where it feels like every single mock draft, I've just penciled in either Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland. And now, because they made a move to get Evan Ingram, I am very confident that they will not be drafting a Colston Loveland at this spot. Because don't get me wrong, a two tight end package of Colston Loveland and Evan Ingram is very intriguing, but they're both kind of pass catchers, don't offer a lot in the run game. I think it would be pretty rare that you would see both those tight ends on the field at the same time. So I think this now opens the possibility for the Broncos to do some interesting things. Do they go defensive line because they have a lot of expiring contracts coming up, or do they be the first team to enter the Omarion Hampton sweepstakes? We've heard a lot about the Ashton Jeanty sweepstakes, but Omarion Hampton's also a first-round running back. Don't get that mistaken here. I will certainly go back and forth on what I think the Broncos should do between running back and D line. At this point in time, I'm going to entertain the option of Omarion Hampton being a real dominant force for Denver for a very long time. Steelers at 21. It is so baffling to me that the Steelers had both Justin Fields and Russell Wilson and now have neither of them, and they're putting all their eggs into the Aaron Rodgers basket of all players. Like, that is just terrible management and terrible decisions. I don't know how much Mike Tomlin is playing a role in their offseason decisions. I would assume a whole lot considering how long he's been there. But brother, if they do this Aaron Rodgers move and it doesn't work out, I will be vocally calling for Mike Tomlin's job because that is just a terrible long-term decision at your quarterback position. I think Jackson Dart, considering how one of his biggest strengths is the deep ball and being able to push it downfield, and now you have two of the best downfield threats in the NFL, I really think you say F the quarterback free agency market. Let's roll with Jackson Dart at 21 and not pay a quarterback a lot of money for a pretty long time. I think that would be very intriguing. Will they do it though? I'm gonna say yes. Obviously, in the future, I'll explore different options, maybe cornerback, maybe another receiver. But at this point in time, I am intrigued at what Jackson Dart could mean for the Steelers at number 21 overall. Chargers at 22. A lot of possibilities here. They just signed Mekhi Becton to address the interior of the offensive line. So guess who's available? Colston Loveland. If Colston Loveland is going to be making it past the Broncos to the Chargers, a no-brainer. He's the most popular pick here by far. Give me Colston Loveland to the Chargers at 22. Just makes the most sense. Packers at 23 here. It's going to be between wide receiver or cornerback for me for the Packers. They pretty much just swapped Eric Stokes for Nate Hobbs in free agency, so they still have a need at cornerback, assuming Jair Alexander is not going to be there in the future. So I'm going to look at cornerback here, and I think Trey Amos is going to be a pick for me. Maxwell Harrison. Here's the thing about Maxwell Harrison, guys. I did not hear, and maybe it's a me problem. I did not hear this guy's name before the combine. And listen, running a sub 4.340 is very impressive, but I just did not hear this guy's name as a first round level player before the combine. And don't get me wrong, the combine's important, but the combine cannot be the main reason that you shoot up the draft board. So I'm going to go with the guy whose name I was hearing more consistently beforehand, and that's Trey Amos. Vikings at 24. They've made a lot of moves. Probably been the most active team in free agency. They not only address the interior of their offensive line, but also the interior of their defensive line. And they lost Cam Bynum and Sam Darnold. So now I am pretty confident that the move here is getting a safety to replace the loss of Cam Bynum. And of course, Nick Emanwari, or Nick Emanwari, or Emanwari. Let's see what the correct pronunciation is. Nick Emanwari has been the talk of the town since his performance at the combine. So let's give the Vikings their Cam Bynum replacement. Texans at 25. Listen, man, they took a massive risk in getting listen, offensive line was a problem for the Texans. Then they traded their franchise left tackle, and now offensive line is a screaming, blaring, sirens going off, massive alert for the Texans. So I don't care what anybody says. For the rest of the draft process, I will not give the Texans a player who is not an offensive lineman at pick number 25. Let's take a look here. I think Josh Conerly is the best option. If you want a guy who's going to be a tackle for you, I think Josh Conerly simply makes the most sense. Draft him out of Oregon and at least be confident that you have some sort of option at left tackle. Rams at 26. Is it just Jihad Campbell? I mean, that's the one. It's sticking out like a sore thumb here, and I think I'm just going to do it. Give me Jihad Campbell out of Alabama, plug and play, starting stand-up linebacker for you. Showed out at the combine. I think that would be a steal at number 26 for the Rams. Ravens at 27. You know, it's a mix of things here. One of which being the amazing talent on the board at the wide receiver position, and the other being you saw in the playoffs how much it hurt the Ravens not having a consistent group of receivers. The majority of the blame went on Mark Andrews, and deservingly so. But Zay Flowers was also hurt, so he was not able to contribute. And besides that, man, it was the Rashad Bateman show down the stretch. So it's like they just need more options there. Is it Emeka Egbuka or is it Matthew Golden? Both would be great options. I'm more confident in Egbuka being a really good NFL receiver than I am Matthew Golden. I could be wrong about that, but give me Emeka Egbuka to the Ravens at 27. Lions, they swapped Carlton Davis with DJ Reed. They did lose Kevin Zeitler on the offensive line. So maybe they address that here, but I think they would rather save that to the end of the second round. I think edge rusher, I don't know why receiver is a need. I'm going to go with edge rusher here. The question is who? A lot of great options, man. I just feel like Dan Campbell is a Landon Jackson slash Jack Sawyer type of guy. So give me Landon Jackson to the Lions at 28. Just seems like a fit in my mind. Commanders at 29 here. They've made a few moves, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I just feel like cornerback is still the biggest need. They got rid of Benjamin St-Juste, which is a good decision. Am I missing something here? I feel like they also lost Jeremy Chin. The top two safeties are off the board here. I feel like cornerback's the move. Is it just Maxwell? Is it Maxwell Harrison? I feel like it's got to be, at least in my opinion right now. Could be Siobhan Rivera as well. Quarterback's not being listed there, but I really think the offense is pretty much figured out at this point, unless you want to address the offensive line a little bit more. But I think Maxwell Harrison is the move for me. Siobhan Rivera obviously dealing with the injury concerns. Give me Maxwell Harrison out of Kentucky. Combine hero, of course. Bills at number 30. Could also be a cornerback here. They've made a lot of moves on this defensive line. Receivers really interesting to me because they don't have Amari Cooper on the roster right now. They brought in Josh Palmer. They lost Mac Hollins. So Joshua Palmer is pretty much a slight upgrade over Mac Hollins, in my opinion. You still got Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir. You got Dalton Kincaid. Maybe you don't go receiver. The offense is pretty good last year. Ah, maybe you do just address the defense. I don't know where though. Maybe you just draft best player available. And in my opinion, that would probably be Jalen Walker out of Georgia. So let's scroll down here. It feels the linebacker need while also obviously giving you some more pass rush capability. So Jalen Walker to the Bills at number 30, Chiefs at 31. I am not of the belief that you just keep drafting tackles until it works. You just signed the Jalen Moore guy from the 49ers. You drafted Kingsley Sumaia last year, Wanya Morris the year before. You have to make a commitment to one of the guys you already had at some point. So I'm not going to go offensive line. They brought in Kristen Fulton at quarterback. I, I like the running back, man. The running back or the receiver is what's the most exciting for me to think about the Chiefs. And is it Cam Scatterbo? Scatterbo going first round would be kind of crazy to me. I'm going to go with the guy who has some more upside as a receiver, and that's Travion Henderson. Maybe the best receiving back in the class in terms of just what he could do on third downs for you. That would be very intriguing for me for the Chiefs. And then Eagles at 32. It's probably going to be an edge rusher here, just a guy they think has the most upside, and it's going to be Mykel Williams for me. Of course, it's the Georgia pipeline, but also he has the most physical tools of anybody available, maybe besides Shamar Stewart. But obviously, you cannot go against the Georgia pipeline for the Eagles. So that is going to be it for this mock draft. And the thing I like about this is because there are like 6 or 7 picks where you can make a completely sound argument for somebody else. That's what I like about this time of the year leading up to the draft. There are so many different variations and you know outlooks for each team. So yeah, man, leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you are new. I will now commit to doing these every week, and I also will commit that the next one will be a 2 round mock draft. Finally, the first one that I will be coming out with. So keep an eye out for that, and I will see you on the next one, man. Peace.